When it comes to video game franchises that have been on ice during the modern era, Prince of Persia is among the top dogs in line for a long-awaited return. Despite a storied history, dating all the way back to its original iteration in 1989, the series has been out of commission for nearly a decade, since its last mainline release, The Forgotten Sands, in 2010. Yes, it has actually been that long, if you can believe it. Other than a few mobile spin-offs here and there, Prince of Persia has languished in the shadows at Ubisoft as other franchises like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Watch Dogs have led the company's portfolio. This relegation to the sidelines changed in 2023, however, when Ubisoft announced The Lost Crown, a 2.5D side-scrolling adventure, boldly shifting the franchise away from its last 3D entry and nudging it closer to its original 2D roots. There was plenty of hype around the announcement, understandably so, with this being the first real Prince of Persia game in almost 15 years, but also a lot of doubt. Would Ubisoft be able to deliver on this bold new vision? Would it actually live up to these high expectations, breathing new life into an IP that's been MIA for the last decade, while proving a worthy successor to its namesake? There's a famous quote that often floats about gaming discourse relating to 30 seconds of fun, and how important that concept is to the core of any successful video game. This can be traced back to an interview with Halo Combat Evolved developer Jamie Greismer. Apologies, Jamie, if I just butchered your last name, while speaking on the process of creating Halo. Part of the quote in question goes, "If you can get 30 seconds of fun, you can pretty much stretch that out to be an entire game." This quote, its meaning, and the impact that philosophy had on Halo's development, and many games since, has been analyzed, broken down, and interpreted 100 different ways since it was originally popularized, even after being clarified many times by Greismer himself. Despite various takes on this message, at the highest level, under the broadest strokes of the video game development paintbrush, his words still ring true many years later. If a studio can identify a gameplay loop that resonates with players, then take that and run with it across an entire game, there's a pretty good chance the final product will find success. And when it comes to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Ubisoft has absolutely, unequivocally, perfectly nailed that 30-second loop, and this excellence carried the game without missing a step for the 30-plus hours I spent immersed in the mysteries of Mount Koth. Kicking things off with settings and performance, The Lost Crown does enough to get the job done for a game in its genre, but little beyond that, for better or for worse. There's a minimal settings menu where you can tweak values like display mode, graphics quality, and frame rate cap, along with standard audio options for tuning different parts of the soundscape as needed. It would have been nice to see more graphical options included, but this isn't a game you'll need to spend hours tinkering on to find the perfect settings, so it's not a major knock against the product by any means. Running on an i9-10900 and NVIDIA 3080 at ultra settings, I maintained a rock-solid 144 FPS for 90% of my playthrough, dipping down to around 100 frames during some hectic boss fights and crowded scenes, but otherwise, performance never felt lacking or inconsistent. There was a single instance after one boss fight where I experienced some severe stutters and frame drops that made the game feel unplayable. This was particularly harsh not only after enjoying hours of flawless frame rate before that, but also because precise timing is everything in this genre, and even the smallest stutter can throw you off and send you back to the start of a boss fight or tough environmental challenge. Fortunately, after restarting my game, the frame rate jumped right back up to where it sat before, but this occurrence is definitely something to make note of. I'm not ready to touch on bugs just yet, but trust me, we'll circle back to them at the end of the review, and I'll have quite a bit to say. For now though, let's jump into the good stuff so I can start gushing about how much I love this game. From the moment its first trailer was revealed, The Lost Crown displayed undeniable style, both in its fantastic art direction and mesmerizing soundscape. After playing through it in full, it's quite clear both of these strengths weren't just for show, with each aspect of the game's presentation being near perfect every step of the way. Audio design is immaculate, when it comes to music and gameplay alike. You're greeted by captivating melodies right from the start, and these permeate every fiber of Mount Koth from the main menu onwards. Each playspace is brought to life not only by their beautiful looks, but by a distinct accompanying soundtrack as well. Whether you're sneaking quietly through the halls of an ancient library, scaling icy peaks, or delving through the deepest and darkest of dungeons, each zone's ambiance is perfectly accentuated by its corresponding music. Impressively, audio design is just as strong in the context of gameplay. There are clear cues during combat and exploration that are easily identifiable after only a few instances, and become an integral part of your toolset for both exploring and doing battle. From the noise of an enemy preparing to bludgeon you with their weapon, to the sound of Sargon brandishing his signature dual swords, to the thwip of his interdimensional grapple as it sends you soaring through the air, each sound effect has been perfectly constructed for the part it plays in your adventure. Finally, voice acting is superb across the board, with each character delivering a performance that's perfectly suited to their in-game personalities. While the main cast does an excellent job, I was most often impressed with the various side characters I met and their performances. An incredibly eclectic cast, they often delivered some of the funniest, most interesting, and impassioned dialogue in the game, adding even more flavor to the experience each time another of these memorable NPCs popped up. Prince of Persia's audio is immaculate, and its visuals are equally incredible. The art style Ubisoft brought to life is stunning, and a perfect fit for the 2.5D environments and characters you'll encounter throughout. Each enemy and boss features a unique style that not only looks cool, but also helps telegraph their attacks and movesets. When you encounter an opponent wielding a spear and shield, you quickly learn to anticipate both their well-timed blocks and attacks that cover a substantial distance, whereas a hulking monster wielding a giant club is clearly going for the slower, stomp and bash approach. Characters have also been brought to life with incredible detail, even in a non-3D format. Their actions carry weight and facial expressions convey clear emotion during cutscenes, and this even carries over into conversations that occur using 2D models. I was constantly reminded of an almost Hades-like quality during these interactions, which for those who haven't played Hades, side note, what the heck are you doing, go play it, is high praise indeed, but more than deserved. The emotional weight behind these portraits, whether it be solemn sadness, a dashing smile, or a mischievous twinkle in one's eye, breathed a rare form of life into these characters that I was struck by time and time again. Even more striking than the game's characters, however, are its environments, which, to put it plainly, are all drop-dead gorgeous. During your trek across the mountain, you'll delve through dark prisons and sandy caverns, careen across ancient temples and wild forests, not to mention scaling massive mountain peaks, and each of these adds their own unique beauty to a melting pot of incredibly constructed spaces. Each time I approached a new area, I'd think, there's no way this can top the one I just saw, and every time I was proven dead wrong. One location in particular, the Raging Sea, absolutely floored me when I first stepped foot inside it. And without spoiling too much, as I'd rather you experience this enchanting entrance on your own, it's one of the most striking and memorable video game environments I've seen in a long, long time. Now, beauty is all well and good, but what really matters is gameplay. How does The Lost Crown stack up in a genre where being tight, fine-tuned, and mechanically sound are all absolute requirements for going toe-to-toe with established competition? Impressively, Ubisoft has delivered on that front too, nailing that core gameplay loop so well I kept coming back long after rolling credits just for a chance to spend a few more minutes exploring Mount Koth. Speaking of Mount Koth, before we dive into that gameplay, let's briefly talk about the story. This will be high level and spoiler free, so no need to worry about me ruining things for you if you haven't played it yet. The game begins with Persia under attack by the invading Kushan Empire, and their mastermind, General Uvishka. The player character, a young but gifted warrior named Sargon, and his band of comrades, the Immortals, an homage to the real-life elite Persian fighting force of old, leap into action to repel the invasion, which they do as you take down Uvishka. During a post-battle celebration in the capital of Persepolis, Prince Hassan, son of Persia's queen Tomiris, and heir to the throne, is kidnapped in a stunning betrayal by General Anahita, Sargon's old mentor. The Immortals set out in pursuit and end up at the foot of Mount Koth, an ancient citadel built by the previous regent, King Darius. After entering this sprawling metropolis, it's quickly revealed that things aren't what they seem, and the band of warriors becomes trapped in a mysterious time loop. Playing as Sargon, you must unravel the root of this strange break in time, rescue Hassan, and restore peace to Persia, but plenty of curveballs will be thrown at you along the way. While Prince of Persia's gameplay is certainly its crowning achievement, the tale Ubisoft spun here is also excellent. A high-caliber adventure with some truly touching moments, plenty of unexpected turns, including one huge plot twist that I never saw coming, and emotionally striking beats as Sargon grapples with the tough decisions he's forced to confront and the consequences of his actions. Its ending is also quite fitting, offering a satisfying conclusion to Sargon's journey, at least for now, while also leaving the door wide open for more in the future. And there had better be more in the future because this game is too good to be a one-and-done affair. Beyond the main plot, there are plenty of lore tidbits scattered throughout that, when discovered, not only add more context to current events, but deepen your connection to Sargon and the world around him. This goes without saying, being a Prince of Persia game and all, but the culture, lore, and mythos are all incredibly well presented, providing glimpses of a civilization that we don't get to see nearly enough of compared to others used in gaming. Greek, Norse, Egyptian, Japanese, you get the point. If there's one single knock against the story, it's the way in which some dialogue is presented when venturing back out for more adventures after rolling credits on the main quest. Characters will say things and reference events that don't make much sense in the context of a post-ending world, but this can be easily hand-waved away by all of the game's time-warping shenanigans, and is really more of a nitpick than anything else. All in all, The Lost Crown is a worthy successor to the franchise's games of old, engrossing you in its story until the very end. Sargon carries the Prince of Persia mantle perfectly as its new protagonist, and I hope we see more of him in the future. The story might be good, but what everyone really wants to know is how does this take on Metroidvania gameplay hold up? Whether you're a veteran or a total newbie, The Lost Crown is perfectly suited for both types of players, offering all the classic components that old heads will be looking for, while simultaneously adding some shiny new bells and whistles that elevate the genre to new heights. Combat is a perfect jumping off point for this discussion, and when it comes to hacking and slashing Sargon's enemies, The Lost Crown's core loop is exquisite. Several interwoven systems combine to form a sublime package, which starts out strong and only gets better as you unlock new abilities for your arsenal over time. One of these components is parrying, which takes a little trial and error to get used to, but clicks soon enough. And once you get the hang of it, mastering each enemy's attack pattern so you know just when to block their strikes feels slick and rewarding. Beyond preventing Sargon from taking damage, if you time your parry just right, and these specific opportunities are highlighted with a yellow flash as your enemy prepares to strike, you'll activate a finisher, instantly taking out weaker opponents and dealing massive chunks of damage to bosses, which is crucial during these tougher, extended duels. Unlike these perfect counter opportunities, enemies also have attacks that can't be blocked at all, which are clearly denoted by a red flash, in contrast to their yellow counterpart. These can only be dodged, and identifying which type of attack is headed your way and reacting appropriately can be the difference between taking down a difficult foe or staring at the game over screen. When it comes to ranged attacks, Sargon has access to a bow that, while it can be used to take down weaker opponents or those of the flying variety, is more suited for stunning enemies or clearing obstacles. Despite some shortcomings in the damage dealing department, it pairs nicely with your final weapon, the chakram, another ranged option that can deal sustained damage from a distance. Similarly, it can be useful in certain encounters, but won't be a focus for most of the battles you'll face. Beyond parrying and dealing damage with your standard repertoire of combos, jump attacks, takedowns, and the like, you also have access to Athra surges, think ultimate abilities, that can only be activated after building up the requisite amount of Athra, or energy. This energy is acquired both by dealing damage and successfully parrying incoming attacks, and once your Athra gauge hits certain thresholds, of which there are 3, you can activate one of 2 equipable surge abilities. These vary in effect, design, and mechanics. Some might deploy a healing pool that knocks back enemies and regenerates health, while another might shoot out a giant magical arrow, or allow Sargon to activate a parry that deals truly devastating damage to enemies caught in your perfect timing. Surges also require different amounts of Athra to activate, depending on their effects and potency, and a substantial amount of energy must be built up before using the most devastating options in your arsenal. Some surges are required during exploration, but most will come from defeating alternate versions of Sargon, various iterations of the protagonist that have become trapped in Mount Koth's endless time loop, and that stand between the true protagonist and his goals. These battles are tough, so be prepared to fight them a few times before taking down your opponent and claiming their power as your own. Speaking of alternate Sargons, the enemy variety on offer is incredible, with tons of different combatants spread across various zones. You'll confront many different opponents, ranging from flying enemies that swoop down or spit projectiles from above, to spellcasters that teleport while hurling magical projectiles, along with smaller combatants that swarm and seek to overwhelm you with their numbers. There are dozens of major and minor enemies, each with various attacks, defenses, and counters you'll need to identify through trial and error, then master so you can cut them down to size whenever you bump into one. Rank and file opponents will keep you on your toes, but boss fights are where the game's combat truly shines, and are some of the most well-designed and visually enticing encounters I've played in quite some time. Whether facing off against massive animals, fearsome creatures pulled straight from Persian mythology, or even gods themselves, each of these foes presents their own unique challenge that can only be overcome by patience, practice, and a firm grasp of the various systems you'll need to master. One boss fight in particular exudes extreme Dark Souls vibes, not in its difficulty, but in visual style, and combined with the mechanic unique to that particular encounter, was simply immaculate. It would honestly feel wrong to spoil any of it. You need to experience it on your own, because it really is that damn good. The final boss is a culmination of all these aspects, using them as building blocks to construct an incredible showdown that wraps up the game's most challenging series of encounters. This fight was awesome, epic, and slightly annoying at times, with a few hitboxes and attack patterns that seemed just a little bit off, at least to me. Even so, it was undoubtedly a fitting conclusion to the gauntlet of bosses you'll face, and is more than a worthy challenge for those seeking to test their Metroidvania mettle. These showdowns are filled with difficulty, spectacle, and emotional payoff, each cementing itself as a fully complete package on its own, but when looking at the sum of their parts, it becomes clear just how much this area of the game shines. Addicting combat aside, where the title truly excels is in its take on Metroidvania design, combining tried-and-true components with twists on the genre that elevate it to new levels. Exploration is king when it comes to Metroidvanias, and The Lost Crown is stuffed to the brim with puzzles to solve and secrets to unearth, not to mention a sprawling map to uncover throughout Sargon's journey. Perhaps the biggest way the game sets itself apart is with ingenious map design. not only in the layout of its gameplay spaces, but how you can utilize the map to assist in your constant exploration. Prince of Persia offers two key features that add to this experience: map markers and memory shards. Map markers are pretty self-explanatory. You can pin certain locations of note for later, but even this basic system has been expanded on with a variety of different icons to use within this framework. The ability to customize your tracking at such a granular level is awesome, but the real star of the show are memory shards. Touted by Ubisoft during the marketing cycle, this mechanic really is as game-changing as they made it out to be, providing a whole new level of accessibility to experts and noobs alike. While you can mark obstacles or mysteries with those standard icons I mentioned earlier, memory shards allow you to take a snapshot, a literal screenshot of what you're seeing in-game at that very moment, and pin it to your map, where you can go back and reference it whenever you please. As I scrambled across Mount Kaf, I constantly found myself plopping down shards at nearly every turn, particularly in the early hours when you haven't expanded your kit of abilities anywhere near its full potential. As someone who loves clearing the map in pretty much any game I play, this feature was a godsend, allowing me to track every little detail I saw, but couldn't quite uncover at that exact moment in time. The number of memory shards you have access to is finite, but you'll accumulate more of them as you explore, and can also remove old screenshots once you've gone to revisit them. And after the mid-game, I never really found myself stretched thin on shards when I wanted to throw down a new one. Beyond that, there's also an option in the settings menu, and at the start of your playthrough, to select either exploration or guided mode, which are exactly what their namesakes denote. Exploration mode provides a more traditional Metroidvania experience, uncovering the map and figuring out Sargon's next move on your own. Guided mode, on the other hand, helps point you in the direction of your next objective, but without spelling out exactly how to get there. I stuck with exploration mode, but it's great to have another accessibility option available for those who might use it. And if you ever feel absolutely stumped on what to do next, you can flip on guided mode to get your bearings, then turn it right back off again. Some Metroidvania purists might stick their nose up at the idea of making exploration easier, but these systems, and memory shards in particular, are honestly some of those genre-bending additions that take this type of game to a whole new level, and are something I hope to see replicated not only in future Prince of Persia titles, but across the industry as a whole, because they really are that good. You'll need those markers and memory shards too, because the map is huge, in size, but more importantly, in density. I've gone on record many times about preferring condensed but fulfilling experiences over games stuffed full of unnecessary bloat, something Ubisoft in particular has struggled with in recent years. So, somewhat surprisingly, Prince of Persia is a perfect example of how to provide a deep yet fulfilling world to explore. The sheer scope of this map doesn't immediately become apparent, but once it hits you and you realize just how much there is to uncover, your jaw will hit the floor. Despite its impressive size, Mount Kaf never feels like a chore to navigate, partly due to its excellent design, allowing you to transition quickly between areas both on foot and via fast travel, but mainly due to the excellent traversal on offer, which ensures that running, jumping, climbing, and clambering your way across the mountain never feels less than immaculate. Movement feels so damn good, and only gets better as you add more and more tools to your repertoire. In true genre fashion, there are tons of different unlocks that expand your movement abilities, and often your arsenal in combat as well. These, combined with a wide range of environmental mechanics to contend with, result in an incredibly diverse yet understandable traversal loop that continually expands while progressing deeper into the game. Beyond more standard fare like a double jump, which I unlocked way later than expected, you'll have access to abilities like teleportation, a grapple, and dimensional manipulation in multiple forms, allowing you to interact with the environmental blockages and hazards in a wide variety of ways. Speaking of obstacles, encountering these challenges never feels frustrating. It only motivates you to find a way forward, and this is a true testament to the excellent design all on its own. You'll often revisit an area that had you stumped before, only to approach it in a different way, not even necessarily one that uses an ability you were missing either, and all of a sudden it just clicks, and you're left grinning to yourself like an idiot for not realizing it earlier. It can take a while to identify your next move at times, even going so far as to make you think something might have bugged out and you're completely stuck, but in reality, you just haven't looked hard enough to find your next step yet. Again, this isn't a knock against the game, and only serves as extra motivation for solving that particular puzzle. And, as I mentioned earlier, if you ever are truly stumped on where to go or what to do next, flick on guided mode for a moment and you'll be back on track in no time. As you clear your way through Mount Kaf, you'll encounter plenty of activities to tackle, many of them offering up quite a bit of challenge, even on the standard warrior difficulty. A quick side note on the topic of difficulty. Make no mistake, the Lost Crown is no cakewalk, but it isn't quite at the level of something like Dark Souls either. You will die plenty of times, both during combat and traversal, but none of these deaths ever feel unfair or undeserved. There are certainly challenging enemies and bosses, along with some incredibly difficult traversal sections, at least for me. But through patience and persistence, you will be able to overcome anything the game throws your way. It just might take a little bit of time. Between side quests, environmental challenges, mini-boss battles, secrets to solve, and so much more, there will quite literally never be a dull moment during your playthrough. Don't forget to stop and smell the roses on your way though. And by smell the roses, I mean dig into every nook, cranny, and crevice you come across, as practically all of them will be hiding a bit of resources, a hidden enemy, or a secret collectible behind their often mundane appearance. There are tons of hidden interactions, like breakable walls revealing new areas that I only discovered halfway through the game, and so much more to explore, rewarding you generously for venturing off the beaten path. So make sure to do that every chance you get. Sargon has quite a bit of ground to cover, and thankfully there are solid checkpoints and fast travel systems available to help out with quickly navigating from one end of the map to another. In Prince of Persia, checkpoints are known as whack-whack trees, beautiful golden blooms scattered throughout each area where you could reset your health, set up a respawn point, and customize your abilities and loadout. More on that in a bit. These save points are very easy to spot, thanks to a clever system of golden leaves blowing in the breeze that point you towards undiscovered whack-whacks, which you should prioritize each time you step foot into a new biome. There are also fast travel points located near some, but not all whack-whack trees, creating a web of locations you can easily transfer between should you need to hop over somewhere quickly. Some stretches of the map felt lacking in the whack-whack or fast travel departments, forcing you to cover that ground on foot, but I generally had no issues with their placement, which felt fair and suitable overall. Beyond just general exploration, there are tons of other gameplay systems you'll be interacting with. Most importantly is the quest log, which not only tracks your progress towards completing the central story, but also the various side missions you'll accumulate during your journey. These smaller quests are handed out by various NPCs, starting with one placed directly in your path early on, though others you'll need to seek out on your own, often in some of the most elusive areas of the map. Each character will provide some exposition on their specific request, and then dole out a unique objective to complete, ranging from defeating specific enemies, to overcoming traversal challenges, to uncovering hidden secrets. Each of these quests provides a reward upon completion. Some simply give additional resources, while others might grant you more elusive benefits, and they are all worth tracking down and completing. There are also various vendors available, who dish out new items and upgrades, or provide valuable services like combat training and gear enhancements. You'll first meet the mage, who upgrades your healing potion capacity and the potency of each bottle, both of which are incredibly important, and you should take advantage of these buffs whenever you can. One of your comrades, Artaban, serves as the combat expert, allowing you to test your mettle in freeform training, and helping to expand your repertoire with new movesets and attack patterns to deploy in battle. It's definitely worthwhile to check out his training regimens, especially early on as you first acclimate to the flow of combat. He's got plenty of helpful tips to dole out that prove useful as you encounter more dangerous enemies. Kahiva, the Forge Master, can upgrade your weapons and other equipment, increasing not only their potency in combat, but further enhancing your overall playstyle by fine-tuning other gear as well. Don't skimp on these improvements either. Upgrading gear has a marked effect on their efficiency, while acquiring higher tier weapons is also paramount. The difference in damage between your base level swords and a fully enhanced pair is staggering, and these bonuses are well worth pursuing as quickly as you can stack them up. While initial upgrades only require time crystals, the game's basic currency, acquired by defeating enemies and exploring the map, more advanced improvements do require additional resource investment. Be careful though. Each time you perish, whether in battle or exploration, you'll lose a small chunk of your time crystal stash, and it's often wise to spend them while you can before tackling a particularly tricky boss or challenge. Xerxes are a secondary currency acquired during exploration, but they can also be bought for time crystals. They are needed for higher level upgrades and used to barter with a particularly entertaining vendor you'll discover during your dungeon diving adventures. Ingots are the rarest resource in the game, and are only acquired through extremely difficult battles, challenges, or quest completions. Finally, there's Faraba, probably my favorite character in the game, other than Sargon himself. A sweet little girl that pops up throughout your journey, she offers additional exposition that, while typically lighthearted, also brings out the emotional side of Sargon during more serious moments. She also offers helpful hints to assist in working towards your next objective, along with maps of unexplored areas, both for a small price paid in time crystals. And, like whack-whack trees, she's easy to track down thanks to her signature humming, which you'll be able to hear from quite a ways away. Beyond currency collection, there is a ton to see, do, and find in the Lost Crown. Amulets, outfits, collectibles, and more. As Sargon grows in power, he'll unlock more amulets, each of which provides unique bonuses or additional powers to take advantage of. These abilities range from sound cues that help track down hidden secrets, to new combat moves like chaining together extra attacks, or shooting flaming arrows, and so much more. You'll need to be careful in your selection, however, as Sargon only has a limited number of slots to take advantage of. You can increase this number by discovering upgrades out in the world, but even with a fully maxed out necklace, you still need to strike a balance and can't equip them all. These amulet swaps can only be done at whack-whack trees, so make sure to scurry back to your last checkpoint whenever you find a powerful new addition you'd like to try out. There are also tons of other collectibles waiting to be discovered. Soma Tree Petals will upgrade Sargon's health bar, adding another chunk of HP for each quartet you acquire. Prophecy fragments are scattered across the mountain, and after collecting each batch of these mysterious phrases, you'll be rewarded not only with more lore, but with some pretty hefty upgrades and bundles of currency as well. Most impactful are Simurgh feathers, pieces of the great bird god that watches over Persia, and who also plays an integral part in the game's plot. Each feather, typically acquired after defeating a major boss or progressing the story, unlocks a new ability for Sargon, each of which completely revolutionizes your prowess both in combat and exploration, and, most importantly, grants you access to new areas of the map that were previously blocked off. There's even a point in the main quest that'll stop you in your tracks until discovering enough new powers to move forward. If you're dead set on collecting everything the game has to offer, be prepared to grapple, sometimes literally, with intense and complex traversal challenges. These obstacles can be truly wild at times, with some real butthole-clenching moments as you try your hand again, and again, and again at perfecting the perfect series of jumps, grapples, and teleports before finally nailing that combo and reaching your goal. Some of these can stump you for quite a while, but always feel massively rewarding to complete after clawing your way to the bitter end. I wrapped up the main quest after roughly 23 hours, with 60% game completion, which is helpfully tracked for you in each save file. There is a point of no return before the final boss fight that locks you out of free roam, but you will be able to go back afterwards and continue exploring at your leisure. And I jumped right back in after the climactic final showdown because I just couldn't get enough, and was still uncovering more secrets even 20 plus hours in. When a game feels this good to play, it's hard to put it down, and I spent another 7 or so hours completing more side quests and clearing the map, to the best of my ability at least. When I finally set it down to write my review, which I honestly should have done earlier had I not been so addicted to the actual game, I was just under 90% completion, another testament to how much content has been packed into this experience. At this point, you're probably thinking I'm about to hand out a perfect rating, dubbing The Lost Crown a 10 out of 10 undeniable masterpiece. But, while I do think it is, in fact, an undeniable masterpiece, there's one big thing holding it back that this review wouldn't be complete without discussing: the bugs. This issue was quite confounding, as there weren't many minor hiccups I encountered, which is good. Other than some glitchy animations during finishers that came few and far between, and a single case of a boss not taking damage from a perfect parry. Annoying, to be sure, but hardly disqualifying, the game was free of pesky critters for 95% of my playthrough. But that other 5% is what we unfortunately need to discuss, because these bugs were of the game-breaking variety, and they happened quite a bit more than I would have liked. Prince of Persia has an unfortunate habit of freezing, and while these occurrences might tie in nicely with the theme of being stuck in time, it's significantly less enjoyable from a real-life standpoint, particularly when playing a title in this genre. The first freeze occurred about 10 hours in, when I discovered a particular NPC for the first time. I spoke with him, accepted the quest he handed out, and then nothing. I clicked every button on my controller, mashed my keyboard incessantly, but nothing, and I mean nothing, would get the game to budge from its frozen state. Quite annoyed, I alt-tabbed out and closed the game using Task Manager. Not a good look. This also wiped out the last 15 minutes of progress I had made before that encounter, and thanks to the checkpoint system, I had to go back and do everything I just did all over again. Far from ideal. I loaded up my last save, retraced my steps, talked to the NPC again, and this time he didn't bug out. Okay, I thought, maybe this is an isolated incident. I'll put it behind me and move on. A few hours later, I open my map, plop down a marker, and same thing. Game is stuck, won't unfreeze, and I need to shut it down with Task Manager. Strike 2. The third and final strike occurred while meeting yet another NPC for the first time in a completely different area. I spoke with them, accepted their quest, and boom. You know the drill. Frozen, force quit, back to square one. Well, the first time this happened, I went back and tried again, and that worked, so hopefully this time will be the same, I thought. Wrong. I went back to the NPC, tried again, and froze again. And again, and again. Eventually, after trying and failing to get past this multiple times, I just said f*** it and went on my way, leaving this poor fellow in the dust with his quest sitting there incomplete. Out of curiosity, I did a quick Google search and was immediately greeted by reports of the exact same thing from players on all different platforms. PC, Xbox, PlayStation, it didn't matter. The quest was bugged, and people were unable to access it at all. I'm not a diehard 100%er, but there are plenty of people out there who are, especially when it comes to Metroidvanias, and this type of bug has the potential to ruin someone's entire playthrough, or turn them off from even picking up this game in the first place. Even if you aren't going for a 100% run, Having bugs that force players to hard reset their PCs and consoles is just a bad look in general. Ubisoft needs to get that bugged quest and these freezing issues fixed, because they're a black mark over an otherwise perfect experience and will remain that way until being squashed. Despite those nasty crashes, I still stand by what I said earlier. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is an undeniable, unquestionable masterpiece. Not only has it taken the Metroidvania DNA and injected its own spin, elevating the genre with groundbreaking new features, it's just a damn good game, plain and simple. From combat, to story, to traversal and more, Ubisoft Montpellier nailed every aspect of its design while simultaneously melding them together into a cohesive package that cemented the title as a strong frontrunner for Game of the Year in 2024. I'm incredibly happy for the studio, who managed to pull off an unprecedented revival of this IP with flying colors. Despite the success of remakes, remasters, and reboots in gaming over the last few years, taking a chance on rejuvenating a dormant series can be incredibly risky, but it clearly paid off here, and I sincerely hope Ubisoft takes note of this success and doubles down on it moving forward. Sargon's story is way too good to be left as a one-off, and whether the franchise fully transitions to a 2.5D platformer style, jumps back to its previous 3D perspective, or lands somewhere in between, I can't wait to see what comes next for the new Prince of Persia, and I cannot recommend this new installment enough. Whether you're a Metroidvania master, or someone who's never dipped their toes into the genre before, this game is the perfect jumping off point or reason to return. Either way, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a must-play title in 2024, and I wholeheartedly recommend picking it up. If not now, then a little later once Ubisoft irons out those annoying kinks. It more than earns its reasonable $50 price tag, and has cemented itself as a Game of the Year contender. I strongly suspect it will land on many such lists and accumulate plenty of accolades by the end of this year, all of which will be well and truly deserved. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content, and let me know your thoughts on The Lost Crown and whether you plan on playing it, or if you have already, in the comments below. You're a real one and I appreciate you. Catch you later, homies.